And there, it is for that reason then that I think personally, and not alone, and I think the echo is growing, that we need a fifth international. That is, we need to face the cosmopolitanism of oligopolies, of the oligarchies, of the collective imperialism and the subaltern allies here and there, by internationalism of the working classes and of the peoples of the North and the South. It should be a task, a target number one, to facilitate, to contribute to creating. Now, if time will allow in the discussion, we could look more into the different facets of the challenge of that. But I'm not so pessimistic, because I think that things will happen in the center also. I don't know, I know much less North America, but we have a friend here, Michael Leibowitz, who knows it much better than I do. I will focus on Europe also, because we are in Europe. Now, the counter-offensive of capital, oligopolistic capital, was prepared and accompanied by the building of the so-called European Union, the European project. That is a project which has been conceived, systematically built from the very beginning to the end, to today, as the most reactionary possible, making impossible moving out of capitalism, or starting moving out, making, as Giscard d'Estaing claimed very emphatically, it makes socialism illegal, because the ultimate and exclusive value on which its basis is private property, sacrosanct private property, and not private property of the worker being the owner of a house, but of oligopolies. And it seems that until today, there is not the left, which was before the communist left, which was had a principle of nationalizing, that is, state property instead of oligopolistic property, private property, has renounced to it and accepted, as well as the socialists, when social democrats were not considering nationalization as absolute need, but combination of that with a historical compromise between labor and capital. Both have renounced to it, to accept this nonsense of being social liberals, that is liberals like the other, with some rhetoric on the social dimension, but nothing more than that. Will the new left, a new wave of radicalization, take the advantage that there is an alternative, Gramscian words, a historical bloc, let's call it anti-plutocratic, again, without making a fascist demagogy use of it, that is bringing together all the segments of the society which are the victims of that oligarchy. Now, that leads to another point, which is the European project was based on the destruction of the state through a big rhetoric against the destruction of the useless national state and national sovereignty of those semi-nationalist countries and ugly with one another and so on, with a mixture of good and bad reasons which had an echo in among the people, but not to be replaced by a European state, but to be replaced by a non-state. That is to be replaced by the direct ruling of the system by the oligarchy. Now that is the difference between US and Europe. US there is a state, and Europe there is no state. Therefore, I mean, the rhetoric against the state, against sovereignty, will go back to sovereignty of Croatia, sovereignty of even France or Germany. Nonsense. But there is no alternative, since there is no European state. If we want a state, that if we want to be able to start changing the things, that is using a power to alone you could not do much, but alone and as a result of mass movements, of social movements, of class struggle, etc., etc., we need the state. And therefore, that system, the European system, is moving and has already started moving into chaos. The proof of it is that they cannot rule the system, manage the system according to whatever rules they have invented for it to be the rules for its management. Therefore, Europe is moving into a period of chaos also. I am not so pessimistic to think that if chaos can produce good responses here and there in the south, they are bound to produce no good response in the north, in Europe. This chaos, potentially, but only potentially, and this is an enormous responsibility of the radical left, a historical chance and an enormous responsibility. Because if the radical left continues the philosophy of, no, we choose always the less bad, as in elections, and from the less bad, and Europe is the less bad, because at least Europe protects us against those nationalist, rightist sovereignties used by pseudo or quasi-fascists, etc., etc. If the left moves along this line, the chaos will lead to neo-fascist Europe. That is, the right will be the winner, because it will respond to it will have a false response, as always the fascists have, to a real chaos, growing chaos. Fascists appear when the left disappear. It is the failure of the left to meet the challenge that creates a vacuum. The same rule applies for the South. When the left fails, you have ethnocracies. You have ethnocracies in Yugoslavia, but you have ethnocracies elsewhere. Burundi and Rwanda is typical of that, and one of the most dramatic examples, but not alone. Or the pseudo-religion, not religion, that is political Islam, political Hinduism, is BJP in India, or similar things that you have in North America and that you have with the present Pope of Rome, etc., fundamentalism or so-called fundamentalism, Christianism and so on. If the left, radical left, does not radicalize in the time in which we have moved in, it will be all those sorts of things that will occupy the scenario. The affair, and I will conclude with the affair of the euro because it's only illustrating that, within that already nonsense, which has to be, my conclusion is that you cannot hope changing Europe. You have to deconstruct it to eventually reconstruct it along the road, on the long road to socialism, therefore, at that point, and not any other frame. Within that, you have the euro. Now, the euro is the most funny thing, because there is no money without a state. And since there is no European state, and the money has abrogated the power of the so-called national states, it's a money without a state. That can work for curious reasons for a short period, in a period when there are major problems. Because you can always adjust marginally. Adjust marginally, it means that the popular classes are paying the price off, but the price appears to have to be acceptable, and is accepted. But once the system moves into, with the deepening of the crisis, to a growing chaos, which means that there will be responses and answers necessarily different from time to time and from one country to another. And that will make the management of that common money absolutely impossible. And that is what is already happening. Because it's not Greece only, and it's not only the weakest among the countries of the Eurozone, it's also, the rules are not respected now anymore by Germany and France, not only Spain, Portugal. Britain is not in the Euro, but Britain has also similar problems, not less than the weakest countries of Europe. So we are moving into that chaos. I think, and I conclude there to have a discussion, that this is a period with an enormous chance for the radical left. And don't tell me that the radical left is a few small organizations, a limited number of individuals. It has always been so. And it has always, whenever they were able to understand, in a favorable condition for their developed very fast. The big parties of the Second International did not understand it, but the very small Bolshevik understood it. The big Kuomintang in China did not understand it, but the small Communist Party of China understood it. I think Yugoslavia gave an example of how the conditions of the terrible occupation of Yugoslavia by the Nazis and the fascists, the correct response was given by, after all, what was the Communist Party of Yugoslavia before the Second World War. It was certainly not one of the major political forces in the country, and so on. So there is a similar, we are entering into a period where, with the deepening chaos, which we cannot avoid, are the various radical left able, will they be able or not to take advantage, and they could develop very fast, very fast. We have examples of advances, revolutionary advances in different countries of Latin America, very different from the case of Brazil, is different from Venezuela, which is different from Bolivia, which is different from Ecuador, not to speak of the older, eldest one, Cuba, and other potential ones. We have similar in Nepal with enormous difficulties. All of them are facing enormous difficulties and some defeats, or the defeat is not impossible, but also more advances are possible. Now, I would like, and this is where I come back to the affair of the Fifth International, also, European people have proved not to be necessarily worse or more silly than the other people in their modern history, and therefore, why not the possibility of having again in Europe radical left reappearing and taking advantage. What I have no blueprint, and I would not be arrogant to say you should do this and that, and less in detail, but the principles, and I wanted just to focus on the fact that this historical opportunity is there. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So now we have an opportunity for some short questions.